Demonstrators have taken to the streets in Egypt, calling for President Sisi to step down. Counter-demonstrations are also expected this Friday. Cafes and shops have been shut and football matches cancelled as security is heightened across Egypt ahead of the planned protests. President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi has returned to Cairo from New York, where he attended the UN General Assembly. That's where Amnesty International urged leaders to confront him about the crackdown on protesters. Well, Egypt says it's questioning up to 1,000 people and that 2,000 are being held. Well, Mohamad Elmasry joins me now on set. He's an associate professor of media and cultural studies at the Doha Institute for Graduate Studies. Thanks very much for speaking with us. Just give us a sense of why we're seeing these protests. What exactly are they about?
Well, there's a lot of discontent in Egypt. It's been boiling and simmering for some time, really for years, going back to 2013 when Sisi took over in a military coup d'etat, carried out mass repression, mass arrests, mass killings in the streets. More recently, there's a lot of economic discontent. Sisi's economic policies have mostly failed. The wealth gap has increased, and Egypt's poverty rate is rising pretty dramatically. In the last few weeks, Mohamad Ali, who's a former military contractor, he's seen as an insider, he's released videos alleging pretty grave violations against the Egyptian people, corruption against allegations of corruption against Sisi and his family and close confidants. Now,
given the scale of the arrests, there appears to be a zero-tolerance approach. We're hearing that, you know, some 2,000 people have been detained. Is this a strategy that's likely to deter protesters at all, or are they so angry they're just going to keep coming out onto the streets?
We're going to have to keep a close eye on it. You know, this regime has a lot of experience dealing with protests. This regime was born out of protest. I mean, in 2013, there were mass anti-coup protests for several weeks. That's when the regime finally decided to crack down. They killed upwards of 2,000 people. They arrested tens of thousands of people for illegal protests. And so this is the larger context and larger environment. People that are going into the streets today, and we've seen the videos coming out already, are quite literally risking their lives because this is the most brutal and authoritarian regime in Egypt's history.
Do you think there's any kind of any chance that Sisi could ride this out? Because we do know in the years following the 2011 protest, the 2013 protest, there was a desire for some stability, for people just to regroup and get on with their lives, to try and build the economy. Do you think Sisi can ride this latest storm of protest out?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's still way too early to tell. I've been saying all week that we have to wait and see how large the protests are, and importantly, whether or not they can be sustained. But Sisi has control over all of the institutions of the state. He's consolidated power. He's built himself a sort of an authoritarian empire. He's calling for counter demonstrations today. They've already started in Medinat Nasr, a section of Cairo. He has his media apparatus. You know, so he has control of the state. It's going to take a large and sustained protest movement to bring him down.
OK, well, the latest pictures we're showing our viewers show that there are significant numbers of people out on the streets, and they are certainly not happy, I think, would be the understatement of the century. Given all that you've said, Mohamad Elmasry, about Sisi, he has a grip on the state, he has a grip on the situation as it stands. He also has the backing of US President Donald Trump. I guess my question to you is American opinion firmly behind Sisi, or is it starting to turn? We've heard criticisms of him while he was at the United Nations General Assembly, but he does still enjoy the backing of Donald Trump.
Well, historically, the U.S. government and other Western powers have supported Sisi. They've also supported other dictators in the region. They believe that these dictators can bring about the kind of stability that they want. It's ironic, though, because under Sisi, Egypt has experienced unprecedented instability. So it's actually been the opposite of what the Americans desire. The current context, though, is important and interesting. Sisi's major supporters are all going through difficulties. Trump is facing a possible impeachment in the United States. Mohammed bin Salman and Mohammed bin Zayed are facing difficulties in the United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia, respectively. So Sisi's closest allies, those who have supported him, provided him with much needed money and diplomatic support, are all sort of in trouble. And so this is a very precarious time for Abdel Fattah al-Sisi.
Well, given that situation, there's no incentive for him, is there, to back down? Surely it makes sense for him strategically to double down on this, and we could be getting towards more of a crisis point as things move forward.
That's certainly possible. I mean, he's certainly not going to go. He's not going to go easily into the night. And as I said earlier, it'll take a repeat of the 2011 scenario to bring him down. There will have to be large and sustained protests until such time as the rest of the power structure believes it's time to sacrifice Sisi.
OK, well, certainly one to watch very closely. It's great to get your analysis there, Mohamad Elmasry. Thanks very much indeed. As we were saying, we are bringing you the latest pictures there from Egypt of demonstrations taking place this Friday. Now, a US Democratic senator says Congress will be closely watching Sisi and has accused Donald Trump of empowering him.
President Trump has been, an absolute disaster for global democracy causes. He has empowered autocrats all over the world. At the top of that list is President el-Sisi. The Congress is going to be watching what happens as these protests unfold tomorrow. We have seen what Sisi has done over the past week or so, locking up hundreds of dissidents, disappearing many. We're going to be watching. We expect these protests to be able to be held. We are going to hold the Egyptians to account if they once again respond with force and indiscriminate detention.